It's a log one.
There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this bootleg episode of Second Sons. As always, I am Roy Rogers of the Philadelphia Meta, currently here in quarantine here in beautiful West Philadelphia that has decided to end its largely smarch weather and begin nice weather, which definitely has made people better at social distancing, as I've noticed the dog. And I am joined today by three very special guests, the organizers of Dance with Dragons, which is the first necked online tournament that is going on tomorrow live on Iron Throne, which you can watch here at twitch.tv/fointel. So we'll start with the people that probably more of the international community is familiar with, and that is Chris Vack. How are you doing tonight, Vack?
I got called people. Look at that.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I'm more than one person, so it's a little offensive, but it's all right.
I'm sorry. I am a naturally offensive person, but how are you handling social distancing?
Uh, Pretty well, actually. I don't have cabin fever. I mean, when you're already nuts, you can't go any more nuts. So once you cross that line, that's it. But work's keeping me busy, so that's it's literally like the same routine. It's just I don't go outside now. I don't travel for thrones. That's the biggest difference.
That's completely fair. Vac needs more volume, says Trey, so speak up more, Vac. Cranky.
God damn it.
All right, and then while Vac's figuring out his audio issues, I'll introduce you to probably people who are well known to us here in the Northeast, but aren't necessarily known to the international folks and West Coast folks who are watching today. Terrence and Rachel, how are you? Why don't you introduce yourselves to
Hello.
everyone?
Hi there. So, what? Why are you laughing? All right, quick introduction. Both of us from Long Island. We've been playing Thrones for a couple years now, competitively. Mostly played casually with each other.
Because no one plays on Long Island except us and the bros.
Yeah, that's true. But we're the greatest Game of Thrones couple from Long Island. So.
It's true. You are the greatest couple. You definitely are a better couple than Miranda and Keith. So you've definitely got that on there. So, uh, yeah, I got the digs. All right, so why don't we jump right into the event? So, the event was originally planned to be what weekend? Was it originally supposed to be here in Long Island?
I think it was supposed to be tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow.
It was originally supposed to be tomorrow. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was last weekend and then it was moved. I think we've got a little bit of crickling. Is that you?
It's still back.
It's still Vac.
Son of a bitch.
Uh,
Better?
no. Yes?
God,
No.
Oh,
It's
you know what
crickly.
it is? It's your zipper and microphone.
that would do it.
Yep,
Yeah.
there we go. Now it's better. Okay, cool. So what we have now is all right. It was supposed to be this weekend on Long Island. Which store was it originally supposed to be in?
Mythic Games.
Ah, okay.
They just opened a couple of months ago, so
Oof, sad. Oof.
hoping to support new business.
Oh yeah. Well, the corona didn't make that as easy as possible, but thanks to the corona, we moved it online. So why don't you guys tell me a little bit about how organizing the event has gone so far?
I guess I'll take that one.
Yeah.
So it completely got flipped upside down. We were planning for just an in-person next event, which is kind of how we always do. I was really excited because Rachel, Terrence, they're new to tournament organization in general. Same with Austin as well, who's too cool to join us today. But we just were really excited to finally give the players out in Long Island a chance to actually host a next event. So we were just excited about that. And then obviously the world said, you can go fuck yourself. So we had to kind of figure out a possible solution. We kind of saw this coming. I did anyway. But Terrence and Rachel were kind of like, no, Vac, just hold on, please. Let everybody come to Long Island to see us. And it's just like,
you know
hold
how
on.
long it's been since New York had a tournament, and it was going to be not even in the city. It was going to be in our realm because nobody's in the city. Like, it's just Sandy. But there's 6 of us on Long Island, so it's like we
I
always
need
go.
everyone in the city.
We always have to go so far for everyone else. It'd be nice if they came to us.
And look what happens.
Look what happens.
So it's
I mean,
completely
it's
your fault.
This is a Targaryen event. It's Dance with Dragons, and look at that. We got hit with the bloody lux right before.
Got there.
Uh,
So
Yeah.
So
go
yeah,
ahead.
while we were preparing for, like, all right, this is a possibility. Let's start thinking this out. Like, if we do move it online, what do we need to do? And Terrence is very good at questioning things and calling out all the flaws that could possibly be there. Be like, all right, did you consider this? Did you consider this? Did you consider this? It's like, God damn it, Terrence. All right, fine, more work, but hopefully that results in a better event.
Well, how many people are currently registered?
Oh, I'll give you a live up to the date count because it is going up by the second.
A lot of people joined today.
We are currently at 46 registered, with more constantly messaging me saying, "Hey, what time is registration end tomorrow?" And I
So
say,
what time does registration end tomorrow, Vec?
11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But if you could get it a little bit earlier than that, you'd be doing me a solid.
Excellent. In fact, you can easily register right now if you are in chat on this episode by typing in the command !dance. And look, you can register right there if you're looking at the chat right now. And if you are watching this episode live, I'll also put a link in. My goal is to get this video right up on YouTube right away. So you can still register from the link there too. So we want to make sure that everybody who has an opportunity to play can play, because this is really exciting. This is one of the larger one-day tournaments that I think has ever really been held on Iron Throne. I think the other one were organized by, a former member of the community, and so this is the first one in the new era, and it's gonna be pretty sizable if we've already hit 45 before we hit the deadline. So I'm really proud of the four of you for really getting that going, and yeah, it's exciting.
I appreciate the dance around that name drop there, Roy. But yeah, we can move on.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about probably the biggest feature of this, which is the new restricted list that you all designed. So what was the logic behind it, and what were sort of the goals that were involved?
All right, I'm out.
Okay.
No. Rachel, Terrence, you want to kind of start a little bit there, or do you want me to just take it? You tell me.
We can start.
Yeah, we can start on some of that. So, a big part of it was just to be a very major shakeup of the meta that already existed. A lot of people just felt like it's a very unfun meta to be a part of, especially with some of the specific deck choices that were out there. And we wanted to not only change that, but also deal with impending not so fun matchups that would eventually happen if we nuked some of the more prominent decks.
We also knew, like, coming off of Worlds, nobody wanted to go to an event that was just mini Worlds with the same list. So it's like
Worlds 2.0.
Yeah, like being the first necked event after Worlds, it had to be something a lot different.
It is definitely something a lot different. You definitely went to war on poor Francis's deck. All it did was innocently roll over people at Worlds and have a mirror match at in the finals.
Admittedly, maybe it could have been tweaked back a little bit, but at least 3 of those 4 cards had to go there.
Oh, I mean, I agree. You can watch the video that I made about this restricted list. I think you did a pretty good job of nuking from orbit that Targaryen deck, which, besides just Francis, congratulations, Francis and Alex, who will be commentating with me tomorrow with their big success with that deck. I mean, that deck's been around, since the Targ box, right? Like, people were immediately like, "Oh yeah, Womb of the World is broken. Let's play it." And
even before Wombed, it was still a real deck. I mean, I remember Derek running it around Bay of Crabs. Even before Throne Soberfest, so that wasn't even a Targ box. Definitely wasn't out yet. So.
And it did well at Throne Soberfest, if I remember right?
Yeah,
so
he made the cut, I think.
Was there? So all right, here's a question I have to ask y'all. So why did you take the risk to unrestrict the combo cards? All right, like I can kind of see the logic of unrestricting Hyper Viper, particularly when you murder her children on there. But why even just take the risk of letting former Northeast champion Mike Aurora's, favorite deck, which Mike's currently in the chat, bringing it back. Why risk? Why take that risk to bring Drown God and to a lesser extent Hyper Viper back?
Do you go ahead, Terrence? You got your
I was
figure out.
going. All I wanted to say is it's one event. That's why we felt that the risk was okay, because if this event completely gets terrorized by either of those combo decks, hey, somebody had fun for one event.
So yeah, that's the one answer. I'll give people the real answer too. Nah, your answer is real for sure, and that's exactly what it is. It is one event. We wanted to try fun things, but let's start with the Hyper. I am not worried at all, one bit, that anyone is going to do any kind of Hyper Viper combo. They may have Core Viper, a deck built around them. I know I built one that was really fun and very fair. And I was looking forward to actually playing that if this was going to be a real in-person event. But I don't think there's any way. I consulted multiple known degenerates for building combo decks, and they were like, "No, it's not possible on your list. I don't see it. It might be there, but I can't figure it out." So that was good enough for me.
Okay.
Listen, our meta only has one Martel player. Like.
But now it's online. You've got all the degens. You have you have the Jank Master. George is registered for the event. You've got Becker. You've got all these Jank Masters out there. So you never know, who Becker, who broke Kyle Vansel by playing Rat Cook, and almost caused him to quit the game. So they're there's a little riskier. It's a little bit the nice Northeast meta of builders and people playing Targ. It's not going to be this global dance. It's going to be open to the whole world. So who knows what a worldwide degens will be able to do with my old friend Hyper Viper.
Correct. And so that was the thing, though. When we made this list, it was still an in-person event. There was no way it was going to be opened up at all. And then it's, all right, well, now we're opening up. Do we change the restricted list now? It's like, well, that wouldn't be really fair to the people who are going to attend in person. They were preparing for a good month on this list. So we decided to kind of keep it that way. But let me talk also about Drown God. So what the reasoning was there. Yes, it is a risk, 100%. And I am challenging people to kind of break it as well. We want to see if this is possible, because when that was first announced, there was a lot of people who were like, okay, great, I don't have to face Drown God anymore. But then there were a lot of people like, really, you had to hit the Disciple? It's like, well, yeah, it's the engine, but it was still like a mixed reaction. And that was something I always remembered too, because it's, the issue was a lot of people were concerned about Greyjoy Sun version, but they want a lot of things that I heard about is, can a full Greyjoy version be out there? So that was part of, what we wanted to see possible. If we take this off, is that where it'll naturally go to? Or will it just be complete bullshit and we, confirmed what we should have already known a year ago? I mean, it is a risk. And I think the meta and a lot of packs have kind of come out since the Drown God got nuked. A lot being like 1 or 2 boxes, I think. Like a box and 2 packs.
When?
But,
it was two FFG restricted lists ago that it got
I
hit?
think so.
That Disciple went on, I think. And Raider, right?
So it was September, right? Because it was right before.
Because Mike won United States Nationals playing Drown God, right?
Yeah.
So it was after Nats.
Yeah.
So
it did whatever's come out. So at least the Tar box for sure, and Long May He Reign. Those are definitely weren't in there. So let's see what's gonna happen. And I mean, just what people were always telling me too is like, oh, you just made Targ Burn great. It's like, well, Targ Burn and Drown God, that was actually a pretty good matchup. Unless they had the cudgel to kind of avoid themselves getting burned, it's possible.
Oh my God, don't. The problem is unleashing Drown God back into the world just is like so many arguments that I've had with the degens that I am teammates with who love that deck, including David and Sean Emberley, who believed it was actually a positive matchup. The Targ Burn was a positive matchup. So we'll see what happens. I definitely will say that some brewers I know, the Lances have been active a little bit about figuring out how to break Drown God again. So we'll see if any of the scuttlebutt that's been floating in our retirement home chat that we have will actually show up tomorrow. I think a couple Lances are registered. I don't know what they ended up throwing in as their deck list though.
I do not see the Lobster, and I do not see David T. So
David's on a he's an ambulance driver in Germany
Ooh.
right now, so he's not going to be there. So
much more important things to do.
Yeah, much more important things to do.
Yep, but where the hell is the Lobster? Come on, Lobster. What are you waiting for?
I'll message Sean.
But yeah, so hey, if Drown God is gonna completely nuke us from orbit, let's see it.
Okay.
I don't think you guys have it in you. Prove me wrong.
Yeah, maybe we do. But that's exciting. Anything else you want to mention specifically about cards that you put on there? Like, I think you were also pretty aggressive with the plots, which I think was pretty interesting. I mean, the obvious selection was Return to the Fields, which I think if FFG was still doing the restricted list would have just been put on there. But what about King in the North? You Win or You Die? Those are pretty, like relatively safe staples of the games as they've been printed. So what was the logic of putting them on the restricted list?
Rachel, Terrence, you guys want to take that one?
Sure. So having an entire field of players where 3 plots are exactly the same in almost every single deck kind of felt like, why do you have a binder full of plots that you aren't playing? So if you really want to like make a deck around a single plot, go ahead, but you should diversify a little more.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the restricted list is really about, is just making it so that deck building decisions are a little bit more important. It shouldn't just be an easy cookie cutter for each of the 8 houses to have the plot deck built out for them, or any part of their deck built out for them. So that's why the restricted list exists to begin with.
It's huge, and exactly what it is. It's to encourage deck building, and dusting off those plots feels so good. Like busting out Retaliation instead of You Win or You Die. Oh my god, I love it. Or actually slotting it at Cotton Coppers. Like, come on.
I've just covered our faces with the restricted list for just those people who are interested in seeing what the restricted list that we're talking about is. So let's talk a little bit though about your Night's Watch decisions. So the card that seemed to be missing for me, actually, as someone who has a lot of experience playing Night's Watch, is Hobby Boy, 3-fingered Hob. So why the card that I think everyone since it was printed has agreed is like just egregious on there, while like poor innocent Halder, who never did anything to anybody except be Jon Snow's friend, is on that. I feel like that's Austin. That change feels Austin-y, of losing to Lamzik like 2 Halder triggers. Like, it feels Austin, but I could be wrong. Maybe there's a broader logic for hitting Halder over like an obviously broken card like Hob.
The fact that you didn't immediately go to me and say that I'm a Builders hater, you know what? I appreciate that. I really do, Roy. And I will say, I did not suggest Halder. That was not me. I was outvoted on that one. I was the only one who said Hob. I wanted to hit Hob instead of Halder, but they made the argument, and I agreed with them. It was the issue with Halder is, as you said, it is a limit, but it's not really a limit. And hitting him was not to hit Builders at all. Builders was not even a concern because the Red Keep exists. What the concern was how Halder interacts in Valerian Steel. And even though we restricted Valerian Steel itself, it still just didn't feel like enough. The deck was still possible. Austin was like, yeah, I have my Night's Watch Valerian Steel ready to go if this is all you hit. So it's okay. Let's, if we're not going to hit Hob, let's hit Halder. And the reason for not hitting Hob is, well, we've hit Cletus, we've hit Halder, so VS is off the table, Choke is off the table. Builders is kind of there, but like, what other reason do you have to play Night's Watch right now? We're leaving them with nothing. So it's like, okay, let's give them Hob because he's really good.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess Hobbs the main reason. I mean, as I said in my video, I think that there might be space for a Rangers Rush deck in your restricted list. That's always threatened to be good. Something built maybe along the lines of that Night's Watch Sea of Blood that you were playing for a while. That you came in second at Bay of Crabs, or were you in the top four? I can't remember.
That was second because I did not hit a King Stannis that didn't exist in Peter's deck, so
Yeah.
that did
Uh,
me in.
That was a rough time for you.
No, that was a fun time. I love that game. That game was awesome.
but some like something along those lines maybe is open. But yeah, Night's Watch definitely is hit pretty hard. So the other logic, of course, here that we got to ask about that Buzz brought up in the chat, of course, here is that you've made only 4 cards from the infamous bin pack, or 1.0 pack, or what the things I do for love is his actual name, right?
Bin
Legal.
pack. You were right. Totally.
So what was the logic behind making only those 4 cards legal? And yeah, and what do you think the agendas are going to do to to the meta and to the card pool?
Go ahead, guys.
Sure. So when it comes to the entire bin pack, there's some very obvious outliers that would probably be very unhealthy for the meta if they were introduced. Now, a lot of those cards probably should never have been printed. They are, doesn't matter. But the one thing that I know me and Rachel talked about at length, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, is those 4 agendas, maybe less so aloof and apart, but those 4 agendas open up a greater deck building space. So it would be interesting seeing what just those 4 cards exist, rather than having to play test. How many cards are in there?
I don't know.
X amount of cards and
20, right?
trying to
Something like
figure
that?
out which ones are going to work. Just add 4, and hopefully things don't end up being too terrible.
Also, you have to think about the fact that every faction got 2 cards. Okay, so if you ban 1 Lannister card and 2 Martell cards and then no Greyjoy cards, it's like, okay, some factions got cards, some didn't. But, if we ban 1 of each, the other one isn't always good, or some factions got 2 good cards. So to try and keep it equal, it's better to just stick with the agendas.
Lanny would kind of have -1 cards if we had banned wheels within wheels, so...
Well, Lannister has a lot of negative cards. Speaking of Lannister, real quick, because I want to talk a little bit more about the agendas, but I do want to answer a question from the chat. So they ask, what was the logic behind the 2 Lannister restrictions that you did, which I believe were bowels and tunnels, right?
So it was to hit one deck in particular. It was Lanny Shadows, and so we had 4 real options, I would say, with that. Or 5 now. I mean, we didn't really consider banning or restricting Kingdom of Shadows, and since I saw kind of a Neil go out of that, I kind of actually like that a little bit. But we kept Kingdom of Shadows there. Just we didn't want to completely nuke a Shadows deck, but we wanted to, and we didn't want to even nuke Lanny Shadows. We wanted to kind of curve it back a little bit. So Bowels was pretty unanimous. I think we all kind of agreed, like, all right, that's a very important part. It's just another engine for it. Let's make them work harder. They can still do the things that they want to do, but they got to actually try a little bit harder. And that was good there. So then it was either Red Keep, Alchemist Guild Hall, or the Tunnels. And Red Keep, honestly, it is a great card, and it's a dangerous card as well. And we've already played with fire with other agendas, but let's give people a reason to play Lannister, because if you just take away all the good things in like Lanny Shadows, if you completely cripple that deck, there's not really much going on in Lannister. So we want to give them a reason to play these factions.
So, but why not guild hall over tunnels? Like, particularly with you're opening up so much space in Targaryen for burn. Like, so why get rid of a good answer to Targaryen rather than, like one of the most frustrating cards to play against? I think tunnels is annoying, but not as frustrating a play pattern as Alchemist Guild Hall, particularly with Red Keep existing now. Right now that they have the redundancy plus treachery, if you want to play treachery, now that Lannister has I think that's like a play pattern that at least I found to be really frustrating to play against compared to Tunnels, which is a fairer Shadows card. Fairer, I should put that in scare quotes. It's a fairer Shadows card. So why Tunnels over Guild Hall?
Honestly, we thought Tunnels was the worst card, and we thought it was going a little later on Lanny. So that's why we picked Tunnels. It was still just to kind of, again, open it up to some susceptibility with Burn. We were okay with that. If everything went totally Burn, then so be it. But I still think a Lanny Shadows deck doesn't just flat out lose to Burn without Tunnels. I mean, you can still do tricks. You still have underhanded methods. Yeah, so those options are there. And leaving the guild hall again, it was just this is a strong card, and it's also a card that can be bannered. So go
Fair.
for it.
So let's go back to the agendas. So the bin pack agendas. So what do you? So one of them you restricted, aloof and apart, but the other ones are sort of free to reign. So what do you think their impact is going to be on the meta and on the card pool?
Hey guys,
Hoo boy. So
you got that one. Stop me.
let's take the one super obvious one, Long Voyage. I personally don't think that is actually going to make too much of an impact. There's not enough good cards in any one faction that would make that a viable choice with the 100 card deck size limit. The one that I'm excited about is Knights of the Realm. Knights of the Realm was a lot of fun in first edition. Now, I didn't play competitively at all in first edition. I played very casually, but it was still a lot of fun to play with Knights of the Realm. Just the fact that you get the extra one card per turn. You take any deck that struggles with draw, let's say Lannister, Knights of the Realm. Lannister may not have the best draw at any given point. I could be completely wrong with that, but it gives you an extra card per turn and makes a different deck viable. Do you want to take Aloof and Apart?
No, you can.
Okay, love you.
Aloof and Apart.
Aloof and Apart. So
that's how we all should be right now, right? Like, isn't that social distancing?
Yeah. So that one stands out as the only one we chose to restrict. And most of it was due to the very obvious interaction with Great Hall. There was no avoiding a deck that is going to just run every good 6-drop that they own. And there are many factions with those.
Great.
It's throwing Great Hall at the gates, aloof and apart. That deck basically builds itself. Even a terrible deck builder like myself could put that together. And probably do well. That one's still probably going to do some decent damage because it is just such a... It's giving any deck economy. And as we know from the existence of At the Gates, Great Hall, Gates of the Moon, economy wins games. Funny little thing.
Particular economy that leads you to playing big characters at a pace that your opponent can't keep up with wins games, so...
Oh, yeah.
Did we... So, Long Voyage, Aloof and Apart, Knights. I feel like we're missing one. Oh, Dance... not Dance. Dark Wings, Dark Words.
That's it.
So, what about that one?
I can answer that one.
Yeah, you can take on that one. That one's probably a little bit more your wheelhouse.
It honestly, like, if we're going to hit VS, like, we still give people the option to go Dark Wings. It's a different... it's... kind of, it's similar enough to where, like, a certain play style, it's like, all right, I just want to do a draw engine. Like, the fact that it's only a card is what I like more about it instead of a card or a gold. I think Dark Wings is more balanced than VS, my own personal opinion.
It is only simply because attachments as a card type got pushed in second edition, and I don't think Nate or Danny... I was actually just talking to some people about this actually last night. I don't think Nate or Danny figured out how to price events properly in second edition. So the event pool is a lot like weirder and harder to build around than attachments, which a lot of them were like almost playable. And then once you draw a card or gain a gold on them, it's like, of course I can play this. Oh, and I can ambush them? Okay, yeah. Why wouldn't I play these these solid attachments? Well, I think events are a little bit more all over the place. So, and particularly with a lot of the really good ones restricted, it's hard to build around. So I do think you're right that I think Dark Wings will probably end up being a little bit of more of a fun agenda, something closer to Long Voyage, and I would expect that Aloof and Apart and Knights of the Realm are the ones that really run away with people's success. Particularly, I'm excited to see. I really hope someone registers Tyrell Knights. I think that deck, because I think the problem that Tyrell Knights always had is it to play the Knights package, you had to give up Tyrell's card advantage engines, except for like Pleasure Barge, which is powerful. Don't get me wrong, but I think Pleasure Barge over time has kind of gotten a little bit less powerful. And as economy has gotten really more important as time has gone along, like Knights, the opportunity cost of Pleasure Barge has gone down. But now the fact that it doesn't need to hit its economy to draw an additional card is really strong, and it gives you to play like the only broken Tyrell cards that like aren't restricted, which is Green Apple Knight, which is a card that having lost to Julio at the time I won, luckily I dodged him in the top 4. Thanks, Mike, if you're still in chat, for knocking Julio out at the very first Wins of Winter on the Northeast Championship Tour. Like, the Green Apple Knight is a busted card, and the fact that it now has some real support from the agenda, people are able to play green cards again. So.
We've got 50 people going. I'm sure someone will play it.
Hopefully, I'm immediately just overriding any suggestions. If we have a Tyrell Knights deck, I'll just be like, that's what we're gonna do this. That's what we're gonna do this round for the streaming and commentary. So, is there anything else you all want to say about the restricted list and the card pool before we move on to talking about what factions we think might be the best?
I got nothing else to add on the restricted list. I'm happy that for the it's been overwhelmingly positive. I would say is the response to our restricted list. I mean, there's always, I would say, overwhelmingly. There obviously has been a few who obviously hate it, but it's comparison numbers. Like, more people are like, okay, like, I see what you guys were going for, and I'm willing to try it. And that was really what we wanted to do. We just wanted to give some people the freedom to kind of build a crazy idea. Like, hey, I've had this deck in the back that, it would be really, it's a good tier 2 deck. I really want to enter a tournament in it, but all these other decks are just running roughshod on the meta, and this deck will just never see play. Well, it's like, all right, well, we hit all the big heavy hitters. Now is the time to bring that out there, that cool idea. I don't really want to call it jank, but just, a tier 2 deck in a World's meta could be a tier 1 deck in a dance meta. And we want to reward that kind of creative thinking and deck building.
Cool. Rachel and Terrence, anything you want to say about the restricted list before I ask you both about what factions you think are going to dominate?
No, I think Beck got it.
I think the only thing I could probably add is a lot of if there was any negative feedback from the restricted list, a lot of it was knee-jerk, where it's people going, you can't change that much, and then they think about it like, oh, you know what? A lot of these changes make sense. That's what I saw, at least.
Cool. All right, so I'll start with you two. What factions do you think are still powerful, or are the factions to look at for tomorrow? So say, you're Buzz right now, who, might have just learned that the tournament is open to everybody and is going to be signed up. What would you suggest that they play or look at to play tomorrow?
We definitely think Targaryen is still going to be pretty big. We think Dragon Pit's going to make a really, widespread across the board. Right?
Yeah.
Or you have anything?
Stole my thing. But the one thing that I'm excited for is when the Barra Box dropped, a lot of the playtesting and play styles gravitated towards the cohort style deck and the Solis Raholer card. And we might see some very interesting Barra cards Barra decks that just aren't necessarily revolving around Raholer or I've got 2 kings deck.
So you mean Barramaesters. Have you played or seen in action that Barramaesters deck? It is sweet AF, let me tell you. I almost brought it to Worlds. I regret actually not bringing it to Worlds. I chickened out at the last minute and played Valerian Steel and didn't actually have all that much fun. So the Barra deck was very powerful before the restricted list. And I think it's probably the only immediately like ready to go Barra deck with your restricted list, and I think that it just gets more powerful because it has a solid burn matchup, and it has a solid just a variety of good matchups with all its saves, and its ability to play off the top of its deck is just really really powerful. And I expect to see a couple people playing Baramaesters. Uh, and it does. I think you're right that it opens up space for that to move into the sort of like playable Barra deck slot now that Cohor is thankfully unplayable. So, what about you, Vac?
I am gonna partially abstain from this just because I've already started deck checks, so I've already kind of seen what a lot of people
Well,
are kind of
what
throwing
would
out.
you play if you were gonna do that?
There were two decks that I had lined up, I'll say there was three decks that I personally had lined up that I wanted to play. One was a Stark Hollow Hill Attrition. I love that deck. It's similar in probably the more efficient version of the Stark Assault list that I was running back then. It kind of reminds me of that similar play style, and I think I could have pulled it off with retals and counting coppers. So I was really excited to kind of try that one. But I thought, that's if I was like lazy and didn't want to try something new. Same with a Mace passive power deck, one similar that I ran to at Winds of Winter. I literally had to change one plot in that deck. Yeah, Terrence is having some PTSD right there from that, getting triple AFK in one turn at the Palace.
Oh man, Mason that's
not
old.
fun.
That's like first generation Mace decks, like what Tyrell Summer, like that winter before everybody just realized why do you want to do cool things with Mace? You should just gain as much power as fast as possible.
No, I'd rather kneel Leighton Hightower to put a Blessed by the Maiden knelt onto Mace so then I could use my HFK instead and knock off a Cohort Jon Snow. So I love that deck. That deck is good. But then the other one, which was the crazy idea, it was I kept calling it Mark, MARQ, because it was literally Barra Alliance Rose Cohort, but just put in Martel cards with the Core Viper, so all the strength boosts with Cohort, so you're constantly standing Core Viper and using like Blood Royal to give him stealth and renown.
Blood Royal.
And it was really fast and really fun. Definitely beatable though. That was the one I alluded to earlier. I probably would have played that. The only reason I wouldn't have played it is if I didn't want to steal Top Martel from my boy Tom HK. But
or Kiko if he wants to, if he's gonna register.
No, I'll steal from Kiko all day long. Fuck that
guy. Yeah, I definitely think that probably the tier 1 faction is Targaryen, but I think that except for Targ I think still remains an outlier. But I think for all the other factions, they were lowered to about the power level of where Greyjoy was at Worlds, which sounds really bad because Greyjoy was in a bad spot at Worlds. But when every faction but Targaryen is at that level, it's an interesting place. So I actually could maybe see some Greyjoy decks having more success. I could definitely see Lannister having some more success. Like I actually think that in this build, like Lannister Valyrian Steel might actually be a pretty interesting build to explore. It was like almost there. That's what I played at Oktoberfest, and it suffered from the what order you draw your cards in problem that sometimes Lannister has. If you drew your good cards, you did really well. The games where you didn't draw your good cards, you didn't do as well. But I think that now that the power level is a little lower, that there's a little bit more room for those kind of decks to have success. And I definitely think Baramaesters is something that people should definitely be looking at. And I'd be interested to see if Night's Watch people figure out like a good Night's Watch build with one of its like since the first cycle Halder's been around, like good cards that like you just don't even like you build a Night's Watch deck and you put at least one holder in it, and so it's just like not doing that will be an interesting deck building challenge. I wonder if people will be able to come up to it. So. Yeah. Any other thoughts about the meta,
guys? Nope.
Folks. All right. So why don't we just do some Q&A? So the chat can ask us any questions that they want about Dance with Dragons. Buzz actually asked specifically a rules question earlier, so let me grab it. So he wants to know, was there discussions around the rule set? A number of cards are fine if you put a global limit on them. For example, Halder, but also Tana Merriweather, right? Is that what her thing is? So did you all consider that like a really fundamental redesign, really, of the rules coming into this? Because this is going to be one of the first major tournaments after the end of official FOG support.
Yeah. Go ahead, Terrence.
So back when Vac mentioned that I challenged some of the stuff that we had ideas for, one of them was doing the exact thing there, putting a global limit of X amount of times per round on anything that didn't have any kind of a limit put onto it. With the player committee, I felt we didn't really want to overstep that far and make big rules decisions. A restricted list is one thing, but making big rules decisions kind of seemed a little outside of our scope. So that was partially my fault. So if you guys wanted that, blame me. Sorry.
Happy to blame you, Terrence. So, did anyone else?
I'm checking in the chat. It looks like Trey is pointing out a actual good piece of, like, in hindsight, that this has worked out. If we had instituted that kind of limit like we were thinking of, we were on the fence of doing it, but we didn't do it. It would have been really tough to do that with. You can't do it on Iron Throne. So the fact that we didn't actually do that for this restricted list actually worked out in our favor.
Validated.
Absolutely. So Martin Lewis asked on Facebook earlier about, and Martin is playing tomorrow. Looking forward to the episode and the event. Generally a great restricted list, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the restricted of passing the Black Gate over I Am No One. Stark are looking pretty strong in this. So why passing? Which is something I also noted in my video of an interesting card.
Yeah, Vac, why passing?
Yeah, Rachel, why passing? It was passing or I Am No One was really where we were kind of thinking, and again, passing seemed like hitting that was actually less impactful than I Am No One. We wanted to hit some of these Stark decks, and a lot of them were running passing. We were seeing fealty decks that ran passing the Black Gate. And it's like, you already have an agenda that deals your house card, but it's just the card was just so much value when you just go Baron Scout, Baron Scout, Baron Scout. And so that was also kind of considered of just hit the Scout then too. Like, you can do that and then keep passing around. And it's like it just didn't feel right. So we wanted to try out passing because the others have tried I Am No One. Let's just see if that changes anything. I'd rather have Stark having, this stealth and insight and kind of make them work to get card economy as opposed to having actual economy where they're just going to flood the board. Let's see what happened. And then Rickon, why we hit Rickon.
Why Ricky boy? You hit all of the reasons to play Ricky except at the gates. So is it what, because of the interaction with the plot, Heir to the Iron Throne?
Yes, that is the main reason. Rickon is one of my favorite cards, so it wasn't something I took lightly. I was playing that card when he was terrible, but still kind of is a little terrible. But it's just
ask Sam if it was ever terrible.
it makes your setups so much better because you can set up Fat Cat and him. So now your cost curves of your 7s and your 1 slots. But if you remove Rickon, and it is a soft ban on Rickon, if you remove that, then it just makes you kind of work a little bit more on your setups and your cost curve for Stark, which is something that we really wanted to do. But really, it's mostly air.
Wait.
And
why would you? Wait, you're not saying people would pick Rickon as their restricted card over it's so much better than Wyman, Mira, passing, Great Hall.
I thought you were serious. That was a good sell, Roy. I was like, wait a minute, hold on, what the?
Sorry. Continue, Vac.
Yeah, no, but that's really what it is. It's air. We thought that barring would kind of get scaled back a little bit because of us hitting some of these shadow decks. So, we were worried of tons of air coming in. So we wanted to limit that a little bit.
Why not just restrict air, though?
Could have.
So.
Maybe should have.
Anyway, but I think that answers Martin's question anyway. Well, Julio asks, why Cal? I assume Cal Drogo here, not Julio, because Julio is currently not restricted. So why Cal Drogo? I mean,
Mostly to piss him off specifically. Like when we posted that list, Julio, he was so angry. He couldn't even text me. He sent me a voice recording to be like, Zach, why
cursing you out. Wow.
Oh, he didn't curse. He was very polite because Julio was one of the nicest human beings on this planet. But you could tell he was very upset and scolding me.
Well, I'm sorry, Julio, but Cal is definitely the longest standing card that should have been restricted that wasn't restricted, that was on that list. Like, Cal should have been restricted a long time ago. And Julio says you owe him a beer, by the way.
Yeah, I do. That's easy.
So we'll throw this one to Terrence and Rachel. How are you holding up through quarantine? So how are you all doing? We'll start with you two.
Social distancing.
Switch, good choice.
Social distancing. I've basically been locked up since about a week before the official announcement was. My CEO saw this coming and was basically like, "Hey, let's be ahead of the curve. Everybody just work from home." And he helped us set things up where we could just do that extremely easily. And I've been holed out in my house for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Little
I've been here a little bit less, but we stocked up. We already had food, so we weren't one of those people like, gotta go buy all the toilet paper. We just happened to have bought it already, so we're kind of like, we're set. Let's just stay home and not get infected.
Completely fair. Vac?
Handling it pretty well. The same. I'm in a similar situation with Terrence, where this is officially the end of week 2 of working remotely. So it's something I was, it's something I'm used to at this point. But I've actually been doing more work remotely because people are actually trying harder to reach out to you, and like our company is very big on, we need to recreate the office experience.
Oh, Jesus.
You all need to be having conversations. It's like, no, that was the best part. I was home. I was getting shit done instead of having stupid people come to me with stupid fucking questions. So I actually having to work harder. But that's just work. So that work keeps me busy, Monday to Friday. But then, all right, how do I fight the cabin fever? Like, haven't had it. Cabin fever just doesn't really exist. And in terms of resources, me and my wife are well stocked here at the house. We went shopping 3 days before all this working remote started, so we were well stocked. And then when it officially was about to get locked down, we were able to just kind of grab a few more extra stuff. And right now, also, funnily enough, at my job, they were doing like a weight loss competition. So I've been kind of on a starve myself kind of diet anyway.
Oh, wow.
So I was already kind of rationing my resources and food. So like, it's literally like, all right, well, this is good. So I'll keep it going. Unfortunately, I'll never see that money now because God knows I'll ever get to go back to that damn office again to actually weigh in and collect my money for winning. But bastards.
Here we've been doing pretty well. We've been lucky enough that the school district announced that they will honor our contract through the end of our school's academic year, which is August. So the checks will keep flowing in, which solves a huge number of problems. I've been working both a lot and a little because what exactly we're supposed to be doing has changed literally day by day as they've been trying to figure this out. Which they're like, don't do anything. No, do a bunch of stuff. Then wait, don't do anything. Do a bunch of stuff. Don't do anything. We're going to do it this way. Then we're not going to do it this way. So it does look like that Pennsylvania has settled on an education policy for the rest of the school year. So I'll be basically, actually, as like Vac, I'll actually probably be working harder because I both am the social studies teacher at my school and I run our online learning component, which conveniently was, a small part of my job until this and is now most of my job. So I'm going to be extremely busy, probably starting next week. So but as someone who is naturally a very indoor person, I take after my mother. I'm very good at entertaining myself, mostly through being a video game and television addict, and I have been since I was young. And I actually enjoy, and when I was single, I never left my house unless I was going to see friends. So now I get to not leave my house, and the government's telling me not to leave my house. So it's been actually pretty easy for me. My wife's getting a little stir crazy though, but and may dye her hair. But I'm doing fine, and the dog is also doing fine. She's very happy that we're home all the time. So
Where's the
that's
dog,
kind of where
Roy?
we are. Where is she? She's currently. Where is she right now? I think she's on the bed.
I know where she's not on the fucking camera right
No,
now.
she won't even be on the
Right?
camera.
That's what I'm saying.
Crying.
On the recording you will definitely hear her tomorrow, because since we're doing it from 12 to question mark, you'll definitely hear her bark for her dinner at least some point there. So there'll definitely be lots of Mira. But we're doing pretty well here, and thankfully, again, I really do. I'll say this publicly. I really want to thank the state of Pennsylvania, which has definitely been one of the better states about this whole COVID crisis. So things are pretty good here. Rue is Rue. So she just is the same. Trey wants to know what Vac are you playing a game on the Iron Throne right now?
I am not, but I am looking down at my other cell phone, which is streaming Twitch, so I can kind of see the chat. And then I'm seeing responses come up on my laptop of people asking questions, because it has not stopped messaging me today of, hey, what time is registration? Guys, registration 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
So I'll
Do
give
I have a deck list for you? No, I don't have a deck list for you. Build your own damn deck, you lazy bastards.
So I'll give our 13 viewers a little bit more time to dig up some questions and ask you, Vac, what time is registration tomorrow?
Let's see. So if it's 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, that would be 8:30 p.m. India Standard Time. So yeah, 8:30 p.m. India Standard Time is what you should be doing. I hope that's right. God damn it, Thompson! You just messaged me and said, "Hey, when is registration?"
Got him. Good job, CT.
But yeah, most importantly, guys, do check your. God damn it, CT. Do check your deck list. Make sure that you are following the restricted list. I've gone through about 20 or so of them right now, and God damn, you gotta keep cracking up as these messages are coming in. Like I already checked one that was illegal. Someone tried to play both Return and King Plot. I bet they wish they could still do that, but they cannot. And also, we had another person just submit a Tarxia Blood from Worlds that is the exact card for card. But Mike Lamazette
is that Francis?
Person, so it's okay. No, Lamazette keeps threatening to do that.
Yeah. Will Lamzik get DQ'd? He did do the sweet art that's currently behind there. So Vac, the one thing we really haven't talked about is actually you get IRL prize support, right, for registering for this tournament. So how is that going to work?
So the challenge of course, and the biggest question is, who the hell is going to mail all that shit out? And it was a simple answer. Yeah, I'll do it. And that's really what it comes down to. So everybody will get the participation promo going out. So that's just a letter that gets mailed out. So that's easy. That's the easiest part. So that'll be the majority of the entries are just going to get the participation prize, or those who finished in top 32 also get the Stark one, which we've posted on the page. At least I hope I've spoiled it or not. I don't even remember. But if not, hey, you get that as well. But so those, again, just mailing out 2 cards, and then top of faction is going to be like 6 cards. So those are the easy ones. The hardest will have to be, obviously international, just going to make sure I have enough postage when going to the European countries or to Canada. But like shipping out the playmat, shipping out the pop figures, like, okay, so I got to do 5 actual like boxed up mailing packages. Like that's no problem. In order to throw a kick-ass event with actual prize support, like it just seemed like, let's just do it. And if I pay for it, I pay for it this time, and then I learn from it and we don't do it again.
Or you just increase the registration cost to make it more reasonable. So
yeah, I think $10 US was a fair amount to do it. I think that
it's cheaper than it would have been IRL. So
yeah, it would have been 20 at the store because you have to pay for venue space and all that. But any excess, and that's the thing too with this. Obviously, we're not going to make a profit. We're not going to keep a dime. We're going to cover our costs, and then any excess money will be donated to the Iron Throne and the Jousting Pavilion. I believe both of those websites do accept donations, and if not, they have Patreon, so you can always do a one-time donation. I believe, at least I hope.
Yeah, you
But
can do
either way,
1 month. You sign up for a month at whatever level you want to give, and then you cancel it.
yeah. So we'll make sure that, like, I mean, again, this is not possible without them. And more, if we can actually raise money for them, that's great, because then the more money they get for this, the more they can invest in it, and the more that they can, come out with new features. Like when the player committee comes up and starts making new cards, the fact that they can just, implement an image pack right there is going to be huge. I mean, that's where this game's going to go now. I mean, people can print out proxies, sure, but the digital version will be great.
Speaking of raising money, I am going to be making it possible for people to have access to donating to direct relief during the event. So if anybody wants to take the opportunity to give to a really fantastic charity that does a good job of helping out people who are directly impacted by what's going on with the coronavirus, you can. I just actually did it in the chat here, and I will be every once in a while spamming that tomorrow to just try to encourage people that if you have the resources. Now, lots of people right now don't have the resources because they're unemployed or underemployed, but if you do, if you're lucky like myself and you do have resources to spare right now, it would be good to sort of help people who have been greatly impacted by what's going on right now. So that's one serious moment here in here. Anyway, so
thank you for doing that, Roy. It's really a great cause.
Yeah. So let's see. The question was here. Excuse me. We had a new question here. So why no restriction to Kingdom? Thrones War and World Cup both thought action was necessary. Did you only want to hurt Lannister?
I mean, it's a fair question that, when we did it, I didn't really even, when we were doing the list, like, I didn't throw it out as Kingdom being an option. I don't think Rachel, Terrence, you guys weren't even,
No.
I don't think any of us were really considering it. And in hindsight,
mentioned it, but it was probably just a throwaway of, like, it's an option, but not one that we'd want to go with.
I can't remember.
Like, we still want people to play Kingdom of Shadows, but not as crazy as they were. So that's why we hit a couple of the Lannister cards, so that way it makes it harder to play it, but still playable.
yeah, and in hindsight, it could be the right call. Like, restricting Kingdom probably could be more necessary than VS. I mean, we'll see. Hopefully, we'll find out tomorrow, and then we'll know. If anything, then we'll confirm that Anil's got the right idea and confirm that Thrones War, we're on the right track too.
It's
and
true.
I'm okay with that.
It's true. I forget. Did you guys did y'all, excuse me, make this before Worlds or after Worlds?
After.
After. Okay. So you did know how well DC did with Lannister Kingdom, and the question was it the Lannister cards or was it the agenda that made that deck powerful? So.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
look at Tyrell Kingdom. Look at Martell Kingdom. They're both good decks in their own right, but Lanny does have a leg up on both of those.
Is Tyrell Kingdom a good deck since it got nuked by Orbit? From Orbit by Danny? Like, I mean that really seriously. Like, yeah, I have not seen...
It was.
Oh, it was. I loved that deck, but I think with Guile...
It made the cut at Worlds.
I get it. Did it make... It did?
Yeah, what's his name? Werner? I think it was, from Germany. I mean, he's also an insanely good player, so that'll also help. I should know he crushed me at the World Cup. So fair. The cut, so yeah.
Julio says, "Come on now, Vac. This is Vac. He don't want to hurt Lannister, so that's the real reason why Kingdom wasn't restricted, apparently."
I'm a Lannister fanboy. I mean, I didn't know this.
I'm only quoting Julio here. I didn't say that. So.
He's played more Lannister than me. Oh, wait, never mind. Lanny Crossing. I'm sorry. Maybe I got a soft spot for Lannister, just because, you know what, like, God, FFG, you couldn't give them any fucking decent characters for like the last 3 years. You were like,
two good characters they have to ride on for the first 4 cycles.
I know, it's so fucking bad.
Well, that's what happens when you dominate the metagame for 18 months, and
They could have got creative. I mean, like, one of the things, obviously, during this we have a lot of more time on the weekends during this lockdown. So one of the things that I was like, all right, we wanted to do this for a while. I wanted to organize every single one of my Game of Thrones cards by faction, by loyalty, by cost, and by alphabetical order. And I went through and I did that. And let me tell you, that exercise really showed me that fucking FFG sucks at consistency with designing cards.
Yes.
Like I'm like, all right, loyal cards in Greyjoy. It's like, wait a minute, there's not a loyal character below 2 costs. Like, what the fuck? Like, or below 3 costs. Like, why? It was just such an awkward curve that they did. Or like, there's no loyal attachments for Greyjoy. Why? It just seemed really odd choices, like that you just notice when you do those things. And I noticed a lot of weird stuff with Lannister too, and it's probably for the reasons that you said.
Yeah, I mean Lannister. I mean, I think that actually Danny was explicit in the interview that we did with him for episode 400 of the White Book, where he said that basically Lannister was over pushed in the first 2 cycles and the core set, and there was a course correction, and he didn't figure out a good lane for Lannister for a while. And I actually do think that if you actually look at Kingdom of Shadows, they decided that the lane for Lannister would be Shadows, and you see Lannister has been highly playable for the last year or so because of that. So
and that's the only lane.
I mean, look, do we want to go back to the world of Lannister Dragon? I would never say. I mean, I know Schoenthal is not currently in the chat, so he would love to go back to the land of Lannister Dragon, but I would not. As someone who was on the group of people who built the first competitive version of Lannister Dragon, fuck that game deck. Fuck Lannister in the first 18 months of this game. So, course correction dumpster pile says one person in chat. So.
Every
Yeah.
Tom McKenzie, a Lannister loyalist.
It's true. It's true. I mean, but like Lannister really Lannister Crossing was good for a long time once Lannister went into the garbage can, right? Like Lannister's actually had a pretty storied history, right? It was the best faction for at least the first year. Then there was the Lanny Reigns era, where it was one of the best decks. Then there was the Wonder Woman era, where it was a great deck. Then there was Lannister Crossing, where that was a consistently good deck. And then finally the rest of the card pool like pushed Lannister out. So.
Yeah, I just never want to see any faction get kind of pushed out. I hate it when it's like that. I mean, people are saying like Tyrell's like that now. I don't believe that. I think you're just not trying. We don't think Greyjoy was pushed out. Like, again, I think people are just tired of them.
Well,
hopefully.
I mean, this is my classic point about that. Like, it's not that the factions are unplayable or like awful or you can't win games with them, but there's just like other factions do what they do better right now. Like Greyjoy, if you want to play that kind of deck, you can play like a Targaryen deck that has a lot of this. Like Targ Sea of Blood had a lot of the same similar like kinds of things you could do that Greyjoy Sea of Blood could do at the top of the thing. Dominate the game early, use the broken cards to make it so your opponent can't catch back up, and just win games. Like,
Greyjoy can play 13 gold worth of characters for free in 1 hour.
No, you just had 13 gold worth of characters. Like, you didn't need Womb of the World at Greyjoy at its high point. You just, played those. You got the Great Hall. You set up a Great Hall, then got a Great Hall at the gates. You set up, Balon, and suddenly you've got Euron and Balon on the first turn, and then they put to the torture good location. Next turn they put to the torture good character, and the game's over.
At least they paid for it.
It's true, they did pay for it. So, but anyway, and they saved them when you valored them. They saved, or they canceled your Varys with Vince.
Yeah, the Valor meta. That is, we didn't even really talk about that, but obviously hitting, restricted. Just Valor's going to be much more prevalent tomorrow, I believe.
Yes.
But honestly, like I'm okay with that. I think it's like making resets meaningful is a positive thing.
Absolutely. So, another question from the chat: do you think this restricted list makes Free Folk more competitive? Terrence, why don't you answer that one?
Yeah, you go ahead. You laughed.
He likes Free Folk.
I know he does.
I'm a pretty big fan of Free Folk. I played Free Folk very recently, and if you look at everything that Free Folk has, and I'll probably put my foot in my mouth because, again, I'm not a great player, but they don't really have too much that would be on the restricted list. Maybe Great Halls if you're
You
deciding to
win or you
play a very
die.
top-heavy build, but
You win die.
You
Yeah,
win or
win
you
die
die.
is the big
you
card.
now it's you win or you die. You play you win or you die, vanquish the non-believers and a couple of other 2-claim plots, and you go back to having 4-claim military challenges, but you just work for it.
I think losing Great Hall is a big deal in your restricted list. The fact that you can't play Win Die with Great Hall is like, I think that significantly makes the deck less consistent, which is good. I mean, like a lot of people don't like playing against Free Folk because when Free Folk wins, only one player is allowed to have fun when Free Folk wins, and that is the player playing Free Folk. And well, that's not true. When you're playing against when Greyjoy was broken and you were the Free Folk player, then everybody but the broken Greyjoy player was having fun watching the Greyjoy player lose. And then that was maybe the only time Free Folk were the heroes. But I just don't think Free Folk does the kind of things that the meta wants to do right now. Because Free Folk is really good at punishing mid-range character-based decks that are like, in many ways, like the Greyjoy decks that were dominating the spring and summer, which is, punishing them for playing characters and trying to win challenges. You're like, oh well, I will win all the challenges I want to win, and oh, your entire game plan is based on characters. I'm gonna make sure you can't play those characters. Screw your saves. Screw your reset. Like, I'm just gonna punish you for playing the game as it's on the tin, because I just make that game impossible to play, not through resets but through simply just overwhelming you with claim, and that has the greatest advantage of also killing your way of getting back in the game. But I don't think the game is played right now like that, so I don't think there's a lot of reasons to play Free Folk, but I could be wrong. But that was just my experience, because I did spend a lot of the spring and the summer playing against Free Folk. So
Yeah. One thing to keep note of when it comes to Free Folk is they don't really like the Shadows matchup. I noticed that when I was playing Free Folk, that basically every time I matched up against Shadows, it was just not a fun time. So the fact that Shadows is a little bit weaker at this point, there's a lot of things that Free Folk did like. Maybe it's not the right time for them to become competitive again, but there are things that they like.
absolutely, yeah. Free Folk could not beat Shadows ever. Like,
So,
it was probably one of the most polarized matchups I've ever played.
but against
Free Folk versus Kingdom of Shadows, particularly Tyrell Kingdom of Shadows. The other thing, though, the most polarized matchup I've ever seen is Dragon Pit versus any Kingdom of Shadows deck. Dragon Pit cannot win at all. The deck doesn't do anything. So yeah, miserable says Showenthal. Conveniently, one of the people who was playing a lot of Free Folk in the spring and the summer of this past year. So. All right, and any other questions in chat? So I'll sort of move us towards wrapping this up, because I wanted to make it about 45 minutes to an hour, and I think we're hitting about, with the technical delays of me getting the video to work properly, we're hitting about the 40, 55-ish minute thing. So, Vac, why don't you just summarize sort of where people can find registration, where people can find the tournament, when does the tournament start?
The tournament starts at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Wow, you just talked to CT, I guess.
Now I'm just fucking with people, right? Yeah, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is the cutoff for registration. Round one will begin at 12 p.m. noon Eastern Standard Time sharp. So that's when round one, we're announcing pairings. It's gonna, obviously games will be played on the Iron Throne. The other element you need is to join the Discord chat. We've set up a Discord chat for NEC that's been posted. All of this has been posted within the Dance of Dragons Facebook event, on the NEC page, and within the AGOT, the AGOT Facebook group that actually matters. So it's there. But
the Thorns
yes.
is drama free.
Say that again?
The Thorns community is drama free.
Yes, exactly. It's in that one. But get Discord, fill out the player survey, actually read the fucking rules, goddammit. I spent time writing them out.
He did spend time writing them out.
And I've asked people to review them, and Roy was like, "Yeah, it looks fine. Austin, yeah, I assume that's fine."
I read the whole rules.
Rachel and Terry didn't even respond.
Lies. I responded.
I gave you feedback. It was more, these look fine. I told you a couple of things.
That's true. I did add 2 things.
I'm more than happy to be a negative Nancy, so the fact that I was not is a glowing representation of what I wanted to say.
So
good. That means we got everything right the first time. But yeah, so please read the rules. Just because, again, it's a different type of tournament because it's all on the Iron Throne. It's really uncharted territory. I mean, like Westeros League has existed. A couple of other people have been running these COVID tournaments in across Europe these last few weekends too. But it's just, how do you handle a disconnect? How do you handle your opponent not showing up? Like, so all that was kind of considered, and we kind of laid out what we think is the right way to go. If anyone watching this has any other questions or needs clarity on the rules, please let us know. I will not read these rules to you. You must actually read them. But if you actually
do you want me to open the rules and we can read them right now? With that, no.
Do you have another 45 minutes to spend on your on the podcast?
It would probably be a bedtime story. I had coffee actually before this, so before I even drank the beer, so I'll be fine.
Yeah, all you guys gotta do is just, again, understand how we're gonna do this, but if you don't want to read the rules, that's fine. But then understand that how we enforce them, you just gotta be like, yeah, it's your bad, and you're okay with. If you're okay with that, then I'm okay with that. But mostly, it's gonna be a great time. Join the Discord chat so you can actually, talk to your opponent with voice if you want. We're keeping that option open. So you basically, when we post the pairings on Jousting Pavilion, you'll see, all right, you're at table 5. So you go and join table 5 voice channel on Discord. Say hello to your opponent. You greet, say, all right, who's making the game? All right, set the password, and we're in. And then you can keep talking to them so that you have the actual it was if you were playing with them across the table. Like, you can have that. You can still do that. But if you have
that is optional though, right, Vac?
It is optional because some people have kids who are going stir crazy inside their house, screaming at the top of their lungs, and they probably don't want to have a live mic when that's happening, or God knows what going on in the background. But so that's there. Yeah, just have fun, build some cool decks. And fill out the player survey, please, so that we actually have this.
Absolutely.
Go
ahead, Rachel.
Make sure you pay back.
Yes.
People have been very good with paying me. I am very pleased that is the first thing most people have done. You still have to actually give me your goddamn deck list, people. But,
it's true. I can say selfishly, as people providing coverage, it will be super useful to have your deck lists. And just to actually be able to provide context with some decisions, because having done commentary without access to people's deck lists before, been like, oh yeah, they're next going to play this card, and then hear from the player, for example, Chris Vack, when they go back and listen to the commentary, be like, I didn't have that card in my deck. So, just assume that, well, we don't have access to that because we just assume it's close to a stock list, and we don't get to see the little spicy tech that, you could maybe use to screw your opponent over, that, we'd love to be able to shout out your brilliance of being like, oh, I'm playing this 1x Nightmares, and that just is going to own the person on this turn, kind of stuff. So we want to be able to really shout out people and provide the coverage that people crave. Trey asks, I know we are using JP, but how do we know our table assignment? I believe Jousting Pavilion says tables in it. You go to the pairings, right, tab?
Yeah, exactly. If you just click on current round pairings, most people probably only read the left column because they look for their name and then they look for their opponent. They miss that text in the middle that actually says the table number, but it's there.
And if you are watching live on twitch.tv/PhoneIntel, you can type !standings in and constantly be able to follow the standings of the tournament, which will be linked right to you in chat, which is another functionality I added, learning from the times I did U.S. Nationals coverage. So it will be easy for you to follow at home. So this is where I get to do my spiel about what's going on this channel tomorrow. So starting at circa 11:30 EST, maybe a little bit later than that, depending on sort of how well Alex and I go on the technical side. We're going to be starting commentary. We're going to open with a discussion between Alex Black, again, world's runner-up, former North American champion, probably one of the top minds in the game. One of the big players in the build group, the Bloody Mummers. Like, he and I will be talking a little bit about like the restricted list and what we think we're going to see that day, and taking a sort of a broader look at the metagame from the deck list that we get from VAC and the other organizers. And then starting at shortly after 12, we are going to be jumping into featured matches, starting with sort of some of the more prominent players, some Northeast and international staples. I can imagine we might start with like Derek's game, or Mike's game or something like that, and sort of jumping around. Or if CT playing back, we'll be going to some of these prominent people. But as we go up, we'll be following the top tables to sort of see how the metagame is evolving at the tournament, and we'll be going all the way to the finals. So Alex and I will be here all day from 12 p.m. EST to question mark. I have cleared my schedule, so we'll be doing the whole thing. But it will not just be Alex and I. We'll be joined by a couple special guests. Right now, I have confirmed Aaron Glazer and Mira Bird will be joining us both at some point throughout the day. So you won't just have to listen to the monotone voice of two white guys. There will also be at least some diversity going on there. But we'll also be joined by some other folks, particularly maybe some people once they're eliminated, we get into the top cut, or once maybe we could have some Chris Vack on commentary once he's done with some of his tournament organizing things, as it moves more smoothly into the cut, and there's a little bit less chaos. But we'll definitely be providing you full coverage, which will then be exported and put onto the Beyond the White Book channel for you to watch afterwards as well. So it should be a really fun day. And again, that starts circa 11:30 a.m. EST here at twitch.tv/FoIntel. So, yeah. All right. So that
registration's at 11.
Julio has a weird question. So I know it's kind of a weird question, but is conceding a full win, or will that be necessary? So I assume he's asking about mod wins.
Julio, you did not read my goddamn rules. We talked about this via text message. If you've read the text, it's actually in there.
Well, Vac, why don't you just say it? So
yes, this one I will read. So basically, the time limits are there on the Iron Throne games. So if your game goes to time, by rule, it is a mod win. So that is how it goes. However, your opponent or you, at any point before you report your match, can concede a full win to your opponent. That is completely up to you. That is not looked at as collusion, really. Well, if you do collude, just try and hide it as best you can. If we catch you, we'll fucking DQ you. But as a tournament player myself, I never enforced a mod win to a player that I can think of. I would do it if someone was a dick to me, but luckily have not experienced that. But my opinion is that it always helps you out in the long run to just make sure you have a stronger strength of schedule. There are two schools of thought, and it's not like mathematically perfect, but it's whatever your opponent wants to do. Like the result at the end of the game is, all right, it went to time. You did not get the 15 power. It is a mod win. That's how it is, unless your opponent says, all right, I'm sorry, hey, you take the full win, concede. They have to do that. Don't pressure, don't intimidate your opponent to do that.
Can you ask and not be considered collusion?
Yeah, you're gonna ask. It's like, hey, is that a full win or a mod win? And if they say full, then that's fine.
All right.
Because you actually played the game out, and you didn't do the DC dance.
Trey put the full text into the chat there, so if you want to know. And Julio says thank you. So if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to give us a little bit more time, but I'm going to do the wrap up. I want to thank Vac, and I want to thank Terrence and Rachel for joining me today. I think this was pretty productive. Again, I want to make sure, just even though we're at the end, you have until 11 a.m. EST to register. So if you're listening to this in Europe or Asia or wherever, when this goes up on YouTube, I'm going to export it as soon as we get off here. You can still register until 11 a.m. EST. All right. Coverage of the event starts circa 11:30 a.m. EST here on twitch.tv/FoIntel. Actual games will start on the Iron Throne at noon sharp. Vac, when do you think people should get on Discord? When do you think would be a good time? That's actually a good question. When do you think would be a good thing for if you're trying to play in the tournament tomorrow? What would be a good time to hop on Discord?
Obviously, everybody is different in terms of punctuality. I would be there at 11 a.m. 11:30 is probably fair enough. Go into the player lobby, talk some smack on some people, talk about the decks that you actually came up with. We'll have everything up on Jousting Pavilion then, so join the discussion to analyze what everyone's playing. Call somebody out for playing some bullshit deck. Shame any Hyper Viper combo players. Shame any Drown God players. Call burn players uninventive. Call freefall people not actual people. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you. Just, don't go too overboard. But trash talking is always encouraged.
So when will admins will basically be in the Discord starting at around 11?
Yeah, I'll probably be in there at 8 a.m. So don't worry, we'll be good.
Okay, cool.
I'll wake up with it already open.
Cool. I will definitely direct all questions to Vac the entire day. So,
I am the only organizer who is not playing. So yes, please send the questions my way. Rachel, Terrence, and Austin will be helping, but please.
You can also ask questions on the stream, and I will. You can ask them in chat on the stream, and I will direct them towards Vac if you have logistical questions, or if we are at a stream game and we see something weird happening, I will have a direct line to Mr. Vac over there. All right, so again, we don't have any more questions. People are saying goodnight, so I want to thank you all for joining me. Oh, Terrence?
Maybe one more thing.
Sure.
Oh boy.
I don't know if this is established yet. Rachel just whispered in my ear. Do we know who the judges are? Obviously, Vac is going to be one of them. Is it just going to be a council somewhere, some shadow council out there?
Might just be back.
It might just be Vac. I honestly, here's the thing with rulings, though. Most of the rulings that we're expecting, like the Iron Throne implements all these rules already. So
yeah, that's fair.
It does screw up occasionally. It does have some.
Correct. So that's if there's, for example, Dothraki Handmaiden is one that I know is not programmed correctly in how it interacts with Valyrian Steel. If that's really where the majority of the judge questions are going to come. Is this implemented correctly on Iron Throne? And they have the Git that you can just review and see what the known bugs are. So brushed up on that. But because of that, because there's how it works on Iron Throne, and otherwise it's going to be stuff like, hey, my opponent didn't show up, or they're disconnected, or hey, my opponent asked for a take back or manually took back. Like those are the things. I think just one person will be enough because I'm not playing and I'm not really doing anything else. So when people call a judge, I will be able to answer. If it does seem to be that I'm not able to cover that after 1 or 2 rounds or whatever, then I'll pull somebody in who's not playing and ask them to help me. I got a few people on the side who can probably do that.
What about appeals?
Judge's decision is final as per the ruling. So if I make a bad decision, it sucks to be you.
Oh wow! All right.
I'm doing my best.
Sorry, Sandy.
He's all right.
I don't think he's registered currently.
He is not. He's too busy being a Facebook celebrity, chronicling his whole life in quarantine.
There we go.
He's gotta make some home cooked meals and things like that.
No ramen.
It's true. Yeah. Exciting times this age of quarantine. All right. So really great point. Thank you again. Thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thank you all. I think we had like 15 people who watched us live. I really appreciate you coming. So again, please do not forget to tune in here circa 11 a.m. EST to watch Dance with Dragons 5 live on Twitch. So this has been an amazing, really good job to Austin, Chris, Rachel, and Terrence. Thank you all for everything that you've done here for the community, and hopefully tomorrow will be a huge success. So good night, everybody, and we will see you then.
See ya.